Happy Tax Day here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. This is our show, the College Football Show, every weekday, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. or 4:15, or we're here every weekday, Monday through Friday, unless we do a late night call-in show that we're lining up on Wednesday night. More on that a little bit later, but welcome into the Voice of College Football. And again, it's the College Football Show. Your show of the day, the record of the day, all of that put together because of your contribution here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. Comments and questions are welcome. We've got the call-in link. It's in the chat. We've got a big show lined up because we've got our final top 25 teams. So we have ranked all the programs in college football. And as somebody noted to the channel today, I saw in the comments section that certain people don't understand the difference between team and program. And one of you noted that in the comment section of one of the videos today. So I appreciate that. Yes, difference between team and program. 2025 program rankings. We will rank the teams sometime this summer as we get into the season and know who's actually playing on these freaking teams. All right. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. And yes, again, we'll do the top 25. We've got Peter Burns stopping by from SEC Network. It's always a good time with Peter Burns, one of the class acts and one of the good-humored gentlemen of college football media, stopping by 5:30 Eastern, Peter Burns, SEC Network. I believe we'll talk about the SEC. We may get around to it. We may get around to this guy, Nico Iamaleava. Yes. And it being tax day, I know for me, I can speak for myself. I've had my taxes done by a service for the last 5 years, and I was very unsatisfied. So I took it on myself. I've done it many, many times in the past, and they always put me on a extension, which I didn't ask for. And I would get pissed off on the final day and say, I got you my stuff in February. Now you're giving me an extension, and I understand you're paying for it, but I don't care. I want my taxes done. So anyway, I took it on, even though my taxes are more complicated probably this year than they ever have been due to family situations and this place and all sorts of different deals going on. But that's okay. So, man, I pretty much have it all done, but I just can't pull I could have had it done a long time ago, but I just can't pull the trigger on the figure that's in front of me because of the corrupt tax system in this country and thinking, can I review like the 12 credit cards I have and the bank statements and everything and squeeze something else out of this? Because this is highway robbery. This is not right. I could go on about the tax code and the two obvious issues with the tax code forever, but we'll stick to college football, of course. And with Nico front and center. That's all that's going on in college football, everybody. There is nothing going on, nothing else. There cannot possibly be 136 teams that either just finished or are still in the midst of spring practice. All those players, transfer portal officially opens in about 9 hours, midnight Eastern. So I guess that's less than 8 hours away for the transfer portal to officially open. Of course, we're seeing names in the portal already. But none of that matters because Nico Iamaleava has decided to do what he has done. So that's all that matters. That's all that's talked about. And I get it. It's bigger than him. This story is bigger than him because this is the future of college football. And this is both the future of college football and it's the recent past coming to a head is more so what it is. It may mark a change in college football finally. And University of Tennessee, whatever prompted you to act, whoever made the move, whoever made the demand, whoever stood up within that administration, whether that was Josh Heupel or going on up, the AD, or maybe the actual academic institution and those administrators, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Standing up to this insanity. This kid plays for $2.5 million. He's decent. Nice little redshirt freshman season. Decent. He's okay. He's fine. Did fine. Inexperienced quarterback. We know he had all sorts of tools. He can throw the ball through a brick wall. He can run. He's big and lanky. He's got the frame to fill out and maybe someday be a great player. But he's not a great player now. He's not even a good quarterback right now. Again, he's fine. He's decent. And he is, based on what we know, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in college football. That's, of course, data that we're not privy to, but we hear things and know certain things. And he's one of the highest paid players at his position anywhere. But that wasn't good enough. And now, of course, we know, and it's fully known at this point, that you've got a meddling dad who's greedy and obnoxious involved. So you put those things together, and it's a bad situation. And actually, this could be a great kid. He could be a great kid just caught in a bad situation, making a bad move because he's not in control. His dad's in control, and this other guy, this agent, and yeah. Although he's ultimately in control. He's an adult, technically. He could take the reins, but of course you don't want to cut off your father and your family and all that. So he's got, apparently, don't want to read too much into it, but it seems pretty obvious that his father is greedy and obnoxious and entitled. So now it looks as though, unless there's an out somewhere, that Nico's in a bad situation. He's in a bad situation. We talked about it when it broke. That must have been Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I believe that was Sunday or Saturday afternoon. Yeah, that the news broke. Saturday morning, I remember. Yeah, so we jumped on here. And it's pretty easy to size up this situation. Now, somebody, just like any other situation in professional sports, it only takes one. It only takes, and I guess we can finally get rid of this banner here. It only takes one poor judgment out there to reach and say, we need a quarterback. He's a name. He could turn out to be great. Let's go get him. It only takes one. It only takes one big booster to say, you know what? I want that guy. I want to be the guy that says inside this particular fan base and this group that I was the guy that went out and got him. And the only reason we got him was because of me. So he could have an out in regards to another big time starting quarterback position. But as it stands right now, Notre Dame and USC were the first ones on the list. Nope. Apparently no interest. Of course, Oregon was the school that his dad and his agent reached out to, and they had no interest. And obviously his dad and agent believed that they would, since they're starting an inexperienced quarterback in Dante Moore. But they said, no, thank you. So we got a situation where a guy's already overpriced. He demands more. The idiocy of it. It's just flat out greed, pride, lack of self-awareness, idiocy. And I'm not talking directly at Nico. I'm talking about the people around him that have influenced him. So who knows what I would have done when I was 19 years old. He obviously has not been raised well. Maybe I should make these statements like obviously, but it's a pretty strong indication. You're an average, maybe it could be argued slightly better than average power 4 quarterback. You're already making on the high end. You're going into a second season starting. It could be the second of 3 seasons starting, or it could be a breakout year where you set yourself up for the NFL. And the difference between $2.5 million and $4 million at that point is going to be inconsequential. And you play at a top-notch school, the top-notch program. You play for one of the best offensive minds in the game. There could be speculation out there that, maybe he wasn't treated well. Maybe there's no other indication of that at the University of Tennessee in Josh Heupel's program. He had everything going for him. He was making more than he deserved or earned on the open market. He had everything. Everything was fine on the surface. Maybe rather wanted to play at home or close to home. So those thoughts are out there. Then you just get in the transfer portal and say, I want to go play closer to home. And you may understand that instead of making $2.4 million, you may make $1.4 million if you really want to play closer to home. But that doesn't seem to be the paramount priority here. it's just a pathetic situation. It just grates at my nerves. It's just upsetting in terms of the care that we put into the sport, the investment we put into the sport as fans and people that cover the sport. And it's just disappointing. I am all for these athletes having the same rights as everybody else in society to earn money. And the market dictates the amount of money. But when that's not good enough, that's when I've had enough. That's when it's like, you know what? I don't know how many of you will listen to this, watch this, whether live right now or recorded. And certainly at this point in our history here at the Voice of College Football, we expected that to be a lot more people, but we understand that's based on a number of factors that I can't control, that I can speculate about. But I think if you, the fans, I would include myself, but I've paid to watch 2 college football games in my life. I've gone to about 40 or 50, but I've paid for 2. I wanted my Buckeyes, my kids, to see the Buckeyes play one time in person, and that got accomplished in 2014. That was good enough. We had a great time, and it turned out to be a national championship season. It was not necessary to go again. Although we went the next season only because there was an opportunity to go for really cheap. So when I say I paid for 2 games, I really paid for 1 game, one time. And other than that, I think that for the greater good of this game, it would be outstanding if college football fans could get together. But number one, they're not disciplined enough. Number one, they're not disciplined enough. Number 2, it's too difficult to organize. But maybe if people with larger platforms, whoever they are, would get on board with this, just don't show up for half the season. Empty the stadiums out for the first half of the season. Shake some people up. Shake some people up. I used to say this all the time when Major League Baseball would go on a strike. Shoot, I said this, 1981, at my age and how much I love baseball, I just wanted there to be baseball in the field. I didn't care if the players were greedy. I just wanted them to keep playing and give them their money, and I don't care. I just want baseball. By the time we got into the 1990s, and I saw this over and over and over and over, and then, of course, 1994, no finish to the season, no conclusion, no World Series, then that's when I said, and leading up to that as well, that for the greater good of the sport, even though I'd love to see baseball from start to finish, and I'm not a baseball fan anymore, but was for the majority of my life, that was arguably my pride and joy, opening day, like the greatest day on the calendar, that I don't know if I devised this myself. It's certainly not an original idea, but I don't know if I heard somebody else say this, or I thought at some point, don't go to the games. And even though that is not going to economically cripple the sport, it is going to hurt. And it's also going to send an enormous message. It's going to send an enormous message. Can you imagine? Now, you're not going to get the word out to everyone, and not everyone's going to comply. But can you imagine Ohio State and Texas hitting the field in week 1, primetime, and there's like 1,200 people in the stands? What would that do? What would that say? So I would like a show of hands in the comments here. It would be interesting to see in the chat. Of how many of you went to a college football game last year, or plan on going, or already have plans and tickets to go this year. I know we talked to Minnie the other day. She went to Ohio State, Nebraska, had a heck of a time. And I'm not trying to deprive you of the experience. Obviously, you don't need to listen to me. It's just a thought. Just a thought. It would shake some people up. We all have those times in our lives where we need a little slap across the face. So that's what a mutiny. It's long overdue. Long overdue. I don't have the platform to do it. I wish I did. Maybe I can cause a little spark and that can catch fire somewhere else. Let's see what you guys have to say. We've got Todd, who is a 25-year season ticket holder somewhere. I don't know where. I apologize, Todd. I cannot keep track of everyone's teams. Dave says, I don't get what you're protesting. Not protesting anything necessarily. It's making a statement. Who controls this sport? So ESPN and Fox control this sport, and the conference commissioners, they control this sport in the real world. In a practical way, they control the sport. But do you know who potentially controls the sport? Who should control the sport? If you haven't recognized this, these are not essential workers. You know, when there's an emergency, we differentiate essential workers with non-essential workers. And there's nothing wrong with being a non-essential worker. It always struck me as being funny when there were natural disasters or potential natural disasters in Connecticut that I was deemed an essential worker to get to ESPN. So, you know, I could drive even though there was a tornado warning or a whatever, and the streets, the hurricane warnings, and the streets were empty. Had to drive to work. But anyway, I always found that amusing. So maybe we're even a little bit screwed up in terms of determining essential workers and non-essential workers. So anyway, if you haven't noticed, Dave, it's non-essential. It's not turning on your electricity, your water. It's not putting food on the table. It's not essential. Not saying it's not important. To whatever degree we make it important. There are millions upon millions of people in this country that have no idea who Nico Iamaleava is. They have no idea who he is. Shoot, I met somebody over the weekend who doesn't know who Bruce Springsteen is. So, and that's another story. I've found this to be a trend, but anyway, that's off topic. But a bit amusing to the music lovers in my friends' circles that there are, Bruce must not just be too popular among the ladies. So he's more of a man's man, a guy's singer, I guess. Yeah, you're making a statement, not protesting anything necessarily. You can make it into a protest to say we're protesting against the inordinate amounts of money, exorbitant amounts of money that these athletes are making, but that would be kind of a contradictory protest statement because we all, I'll include myself, we all fund it, we support it. So it's a supply and demand situation. So we fund it, we support it, and then people with lots and lots and lots and lots of money obviously really heap on these athletes. But it's not about making a protest, it's making a statement. We're showing you who controls the sport. This is phenomenal. This is not phenomenal because I don't like Bruce Springsteen, because if somebody makes fun of Bruce Springsteen, that's fine. I don't take any offense to that. it would be a stretch to say he's one of my favorites. I just don't have many favorites, but that's funny. Yeah, the man can't sing, but he has produced a lot of good music. But anyway, let's get back to college football here. Rowan. Good to see Rowan here. I protested by not paying for Peacock and looking for alternative outlets to watch my games. Ended up having to pay to watch the college football playoff games, though. Yeah, and whatever stance you take, I'm not going to criticize it. If you choose to pay double the market value for tickets every game, and you give to an NIL collective, and you buy X number of player jerseys who are going to play for different teams in 2 years, all of that, it's your decision. It's your money. I'm just telling you what would be effective. That's all I'm doing. I'm just telling you what would be effective. What would be effective is if I doubled my mic and made sure it was on. There we go. I don't know if that sounds any different, but it should. So that's all I'm saying. Not telling you what to do, just making a suggestion that I think would be extremely effective. It's not going to end the sport. Don't worry. You can still sit home and watch the game. It's the most effective way I can think of sending a message, and also you can still watch. It would be like 2020 all over again. Just sit at home, watch the games. And I don't necessarily know if we're using the term mutiny in the right way. We are addicted to college football, and they know it. And again, those are the decisions that you make with your entertainment dollar. Excuse me. There are enough people who are addicted to college football. Just my suggestion. I think it's a good one. Do we have any other ideas out there? Karen is going to the Colorado-Iowa State game. That should be a good one. Pittsburgh Husker is going to be in spirit at every game. Again, Todd's been buying season tickets for 25 years. Tukey G is looking for tickets to fall in his lap. So if anybody's willing to do that. So Karen, you went to the Colorado-Iowa State game this year, and then you're so into that one that you're going to another one? Maybe not. And Mississippi State. That's very nice, Todd. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone that's here right now. Thank you so much for showing up. Because, yeah, we believe we're building something special here at the Voice of College Football. I was so excited to see a new Iowa show last night, a new USC show. I checked in on both of them for most of the show, and those guys were tearing it up. And I appreciate, again, all of you being here, because we are not in a position to really invest the time and the resources. We want to make this as good as we want to, but we're still here. We're still here for you. Garrison's here. Yeah, that's a whole other situation that Garrison's bringing up in regards to understanding this in context of not just being an isolated decision that he woke up one day and thought, or his dad texted him one day and said, you need to make more money. But after what the university went through to fight the NCAA. Oh, Jackson's here with this. He's the one getting this going. That would be phenomenal. Would love to go on the Feinbaum show. And, you know, that's really not much of a stretch because we've seen guys that we've had on here that are from pretty small outlets. Feinbaum's got all sorts of people that he throws on his show. So I would love to talk some college football with Paul Feinbaum. And great to have him here as well. That would be a good thing. Yeah, who's going to want his drama and make that kind of statement for the rest of the team? All right. If you want to call me about Nico, if you want to call me about anything concerning college football, the call-in line, I know that I should post that so it's in the description section. I always forget. We'll put it in the chat again. And otherwise, we're going to get back to this this program rankings list. You're going to see a call-in line that is not the right call-in line, clearly. Okay. Give me a call. Otherwise, we get back to our rankings. So about 4 years ago, we started doing our program rankings. I'm talking about the 2025 program rankings. Yes, we've stretched this out just a little bit. We've never done that before. We usually just crank them out all in one time. Bam, there they are. But we've kind of dragged this out. So we're going to get to the final top 25. Check out the previous live streams if you want to see where we ranked 26 through 136. Not a program ranking all time, but a ranking for 2025. Pack Daddy looking for a draft episode. I lost my draft analyst. I had two of them, and I know Pack Daddy was a big fan of one of them in particular. Kind of a quirky guy that we used to have on here by the initials of BC or IC. And we used to have fun talking NFL draft. There was a time when on NFL draft night, I would jump on here after every half round, like first 16 picks in the first round, bam, jump on, do my analysis, take in the next 16, boom, jump on, do my analysis. There we go. And do that the entire draft. That was fun. That was when the NFL draft, at least for this channel, was a bigger draw than anything else. When we had like 200 subs. But nobody really cares about the NFL draft around here. Charisse cares about the Buckeyes, though. All right, let's get back to the top 25. That actually makes sense. I thought that jacket was behind me. It's not. Okay, let me make sure our lineup is where it should be so you don't get a sneak peek at the top. All right. So we left it off at Florida State at number 25. Difficult selection to make there. I think I made the comment with both Nebraska 26 and Florida State at 25 that it's one thing when you have stability in a program even if it's not an elite program, but there's still stability. Iowa, for example. And that makes the ranking and the rating so much easier to determine and feel comfortable with. But when you just have this roller coaster or this dichotomy of good and bad, pros and cons, and that's what you got with Florida State and Nebraska. A lot of pros, a lot of cons. So we'll pick it up from there. And at number 24, we've got Washington. And of course, Jedd Fisch is the head coach at the University of Washington now for a second season since coming to Arizona. They went 6-7. They lost a bowl game by 1 point to Louisville. And at this time last year, we were talking about Kalen DeBoer moving on to Alabama. Of course, they just went to a national championship game with Michael Penix at quarterback. However, I deemed it at the time as the biggest transition a program would ever have to make in the history of college football. New head coach, new coaching staff, 21 of 22 starters gone, and a new conference. Unprecedented. Washington, you look at the numbers there, 31-10 the last 3 years. That's, of course, Kalen DeBoer's work. For the most part, Jedd Fisch is capable. Is he a top-notch coach? That remains to be seen. Did a nice job at Arizona, lifting them to at least one big season before he left at 10-3. At number 24, we've got Washington. And of course, we know that this program, going back to the 1970s, has been a major factor in college football. Don James in particular. National championship in 1991. Many Rose Bowl appearances and wins. Number 23, we're going with Miami. And if you joined us for the previous episodes, you also know that we've made changes. If I saw something, because I wanted to go back through this one more time, and if I saw an issue, I made some changes. So I need to be on the lookout for that. Miami's at 23, up from 25 last year. They're coming off a nice 10-3 year. Much of that had to do with Cam Ward at quarterback. Of course, they do not have him back. Mario Cristobal. Okay, are his coaching gaffes a thing of the past, or are they still an issue? Much of the CFP controversy was centered around Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss versus SMU because, of course, the Mustangs advanced to the conference championship game. But Miami came as close as anyone, blowing a 21-0 lead to Syracuse in the final week to get to a playoff, or set themselves up to get to a playoff, even if they would have lost that game. They go into the conference championship game at 11-1, like SMU. They probably get there, but they do not complete the deal. So once again, Mario Cristobal not coming through in big games. The recruiting is strong. Miami at 23. Number 22 is Kansas State. Now you're looking at two consecutive teams there in Kansas State, Miami, where one has the ceiling, one has the stability. Kansas State, this is what I was thinking of when I said Iowa, thinking of Kansas State, stability. Chris Kleiman is almost a modern-day Bill Snyder. 28-12 the last 3 years. Won the Big 12 in 2022. Always in the hunt. We're in the hunt for the Big 12 championship on the final weekend this past season. Chris Kleiman's 48-28. And of course, he won big at the FCS level with 4 national championships. At number 22, Kansas State, a steady 22 from 21 last year. Not a big change. It's Kansas State. Number 21, we got Louisville. More resources, better recruiting than Kansas State. Louisville, 9-4. Jeff Brom's second season. They went to the ACC championship game the year before. Jeff Brom can coach. Jeff Brom, we'll do our coaches rankings here in a few weeks. Jeff Brom can flat out coach. They lost to Notre Dame by a touchdown. They lost to SMU by a touchdown. They lost to Miami by a touchdown. They lost to Stanford. It was kind of strange. That was one of the That might, to me, have been the most surprising score of the season. Did Stanford actually beat Syracuse and Louisville? And they only won 3 games. All right, at number 21 is Louisville up 5 spots. At number 20, Iowa. Again, rock steady, staying at 20. Did not dock them for an 8-5 season. But let's be clear, this was a disappointing season for Iowa. This was a disappointing year. Dan, we'll take your call when we're done with the rankings. Unless you have something important to say, which I somewhat doubt. Okay. Get back to our rankings here. And Iowa, I'm going to keep them at the 20 spot. But I would lean, if I was going to lean one way, it would be down the rankings. Iowa at 20. Yeah, that seems So they just had a team that was lined up and ready to deliver this year. They had great defensive personnel going into the season. They were stacked at linebacker, secondary. This could be a difficult year for the Hawkeyes. And even though this is not a projection, it is a determination on where the program stands right now. And I think last season might have been an indication that they could be in for some close to mediocrity. I'm going to drop Iowa down here below Miami. And I hate when it does that. Oh, my word. Okay. So we're dropping Iowa to 23, and everyone else moves up a spot. All right. So now at 19, we've got Utah. Man, they really tripped up all over themselves this past year. So for this Utah team, that was a bit of a strange situation last year where they entered the Big 12 and they had it all lined up to what most people expected to be a dominant season in the Big 12, and they were awful. They lost 7 straight games. And Kyle Whittingham has decided that he's going to step down. He's named his successor, but we don't know when he's going to step down. But once you do that, it's inevitable. It's coming soon. So what he's done is fairly remarkable, although Urban Meyer did win right before that and hand him a great program. So it must be sustainable, but it's got to be in the right hands. And Utah, I tend to lean a little further south as well. I'm going to take Utah. I think that this 5-7 season tells us something. I think that's somewhat meaningful for them. I'm going to put them behind Miami. I also saw some rumors about Utah going to the Big Ten. I don't know if those are meaningful at all in any way. Okay, Utah 23, down from 19. Louisville 19, Auburn 18. You say Auburn, Mark. Auburn's 18. Didn't say they were the 18th best team in the country. Can you win a national championship at any of the schools that we've named? Can you win a national championship at any of the schools that we've named in 2025? You could at Nebraska, and I'm pretty confident that you still can at Florida State. I don't know about Nebraska anymore. And other than that, Miami, you would think that's a possibility, that you've got resources, you've got recruiting, you've got everything in place to do it at Miami. But I don't know, that Auburn is really the first school that we've hit. Well, Florida State would be the school that we've hit that has most recently won a national championship that has dropped. So, but Auburn, you can win. Auburn peaks. It's not a great situation right now with Hugh Freeze after 2 7-loss seasons. But man, they poured themselves into NIL and the transfer portal. And number 18 in the season, in my rankings right now, I'm going to stay right there with Auburn, because I see the teams below them. And even though they're better football teams on the field, or have been the last couple of years, Auburn is a better football program. The offense had actually improved considerably. Hugh Freeze actually fixed the offense last season, except they turned it over constantly. Auburn at 18. Florida's at 17. Can you imagine sometime in mid-October talking about Florida being number 17 in program rankings, up from 27? The 8-5 was mighty impressive. Billy Napier was a dead man walking, raised to life. They've been a great program the last 40 years. Multiple coaches have won there. Steve Spurrier, obviously. Urban Meyer, in a concentrated period of time, was the best. Steve Spurrier over a long period of time. Even Jim McElwain went to conference championship games. Dan Mullen went to 3 consecutive New Year's 6 games. So it's the program and the ability of the program to elevate because of support, boosters, recruiting, location, conference, all of that. And remember, we didn't go through our criteria here, but conference has something to do with it. And Florida can be a great program, and has been on multiple occasions. So at number 17, we got Florida. At 16, we've got Oklahoma. And they're going through a cycle right now that's kind of a minuscule. It's a it's a minuscule, or whatever word I put together there between the two, Nebraska. Because it's only been 3 seasons. And of course, Lincoln Riley won big there, 55-10. But Oklahoma is looking at most likely another down season, which would be 3 out of 4. Brent Venables, is he really the guy to lead this program? Nearly elite under Lincoln Riley. Elite at times under Bob Stoops. The move to the SEC, and suddenly we've seen this transformation between offensive coach Lincoln Riley and defensive coach Brent Venables. And Riley in the Big 12 was a better fit, of course, with the offensive side on fire and the defense being in shambles versus what they've got now. Tough schedule upcoming. Oklahoma at number 16. It's still a storied program. And again, these are not all-time rankings, but the all-time brand and image, all of that factors into it if it is still relevant. It's not relevant at Army. It does not exist at Army anymore, but it does exist at places like Oklahoma. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We do this every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We will have a couple of program changes this week, however. So we're going late night on Wednesday. So you voted, and Pitt Snipe Husker held me to it. Got to go with the vote. And the vote said Wednesday night. So we will see you after the USC show at 11 Eastern on Wednesday night. 11 Eastern Wednesday night. And also on Thursday, my schedule's a bit in limbo personally. So we will see when we are available on Thursday, but not necessarily at 4 Eastern. I would doubt that. So again, no Wednesday at 4. It's Wednesday at 11 Eastern, and then Thursday's up in the air. That's why you should be subscribed. If there is anyone watching right now, which is probably only a handful of people on YouTube for some reason, but 100 plus all over the map, Twitter, Facebook, and you're not subscribed here at the Voice of College Football, please do. We are looking to get to 100,000 subs. So if you're watching, it costs you nothing to subscribe and costs you nothing to hit the like button. At number 15 in our program rankings, yes, Missouri is higher than Oklahoma. That would rarely happen, but we are in a situation where Oklahoma's lost 7 games twice in the last 3 years, and Missouri is 21-5 the last 2 years. So now Eli Drinkwitz backed up his 2023 season with another double-digit win season. The recruiting's on the rise. They get the number 1 player actually in high school football, and it doesn't mean that he's going to Missouri, but Jackson Cantwell, the left tackle, hails from Missouri, and Missouri's in his final few choices. This has always been a difficult place to recruit to because they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. They're not in the deep south. They're not in Texas. They're a ways away. But Eli Drinkwitz seems to have found that Gary Pinkel formula. Fun offense. They got Bo Pribula this year taking over for Brady Cook. Look out for Missouri to continue to just be a winning program. Not that they're going to compete for national championships, but playoffs, yes. Playoffs, yes. Number 15, Mizzou. At number 14 on our board, we've got USC. Again, big ceiling, low floor. Thank you, Garrison. Everyone, please hit the like button. Big ceiling, low floor at USC. Lincoln Riley took over a USC program that was in its worst state in 70 or 80 years. 4-8, worst defense in the conference. Lincoln Riley turned him around for 1 season. And there was a guy, a quarterback by the name of Caleb Williams. Since then, shoddy game management, especially last season. And I don't mean obvious shoddy game management like Mario Cristobal or Les Miles, but shoddy game management by Lincoln Riley. Led every game in the fourth quarter, every game aside from possibly Notre Dame. And that was a close one. They had the ball in the red zone against Notre Dame, down a touchdown, 4 minutes left. Let every game slip away. You name a team across the country that was good enough to beat LSU, to beat Texas A&M, to take Penn State, who came within a field goal of going to the national championship game, to take them to overtime. But was also bad enough to lose to Maryland. They lost to Washington. They lost 5 games in the Big Ten. They had Michigan toast. They had them at the big house. Make a tackle. Michigan couldn't throw the ball. They had to go 80 yards. Make a tackle. Gang tackle. Keep the runner in front of you. And USC wins at the big house. But they didn't earn those wins. They could not close it out. Is that an aberration? It's only been 1 season. This is not a Nebraska situation at USC. We've not seen it over and over and over because the season before they only went 7-6. But it wasn't that they didn't close out games. They just lost close games. But this one, they had the foot on the jugular time and time again. Minnesota, they were closing out that game. They had to run the ball. Run the ball. Woody Marks, you got an excellent running back. Run the ball, close out the game. Couldn't do it. Sometimes when you're a great offensive mind, Running off tackle does not excite you. It does not show off your wizardry. And that drives a head coach like Lincoln Riley insane because he doesn't want to win 17-10 like he was winning in Minnesota. Doesn't want to win 17-10. He wants to win 41-38, but he was winning 17-10, and Woody Marks was ripping off 7 or 8 yards a carry. But no, he got too cute. He wanted to throw the ball. So USC is intriguing to me. Again, the most intriguing team in the Big Ten this year, USC. Jaden Iamaleava, let's see what he can do in a second season. Of course, he took over for Miller Moss about 2/3 of the way through. So I've taken a lot of time on USC because, again, I think that this is an interesting situation. Lincoln Riley's in the Brian Kelly place of your record's not horrible. And Brian Kelly's, to his credit, he's posted a better record than Lincoln Riley. He doesn't have any 7-6s and 8-5s at LSU. But Lincoln Riley took over a much worse situation. Well, Brian Kelly's situation was pretty bad after they won the national title, lost everyone, and Ed Ogeron ran the program off a cliff. But USC, intriguing, 26-14 the last 3 years. The team that they defeated in the bowl game in the final seconds, Texas A&M, one notch above at number 13. So Texas A&M, I believe, is in a great spot. So there are programs on this list where it's like, okay, they're teetering. They are teetering one way or the other. Oklahoma's teetering. Auburn is teetering. Texas A&M's rock solid. They're rock solid. Missouri's solid. Louisville's solid. Kansas State's solid. Iowa's solid. Okay. They're not going to, we're not going to see Iowa jump to number 5 next year. We're not going to see them plummet to number 70 next year. We know who they are, what they do. They've got a model. They got a format. They've got a formula. They do it. USC's teetering. Although I just think that they're too talented and have too many resources. And of course, the recruiting, by the way, and that could factor into this decision about Lincoln Riley at the end of the year. Their recruiting has been outstanding. He's coming off a bad recruiting class, something like 18th in the country, I believe. But they're number 1 right now. They're not going to finish number 1. The likes of Georgia and others will not allow USC to stay number 1 in the recruiting rankings, but they will finish probably in the top 5, 6, 7. All right, back to Texas A&M at 13. That 8-5 is a bit deceiving. It's disappointing on the surface because I think the world of Mike Elko. What he did at Duke was phenomenal. Think about what Mike Elko accomplished at Duke. Excuse me. He took over a program, and I used to have the exact numbers locked and loaded in my brain. They were something like, they had lost 16 of 17 ACC games when he arrived. They had not had a winning record. You can go through all sorts of metrics on Duke's performance in the final 5 years of David Cutcliffe, and none of it looks good. Mike Elko steps in, and by sheer ability to coach, organize, coach, and David Cutcliffe was no clown. He was really good. Probably had seen his better days, probably a good time for him to step down. This is what happens with people, is nobody is the same start to finish. People change. People accelerate their abilities. They learn, they grow, and people wane. They fall off. They lose some energy. This job as a college football coach takes a ton of energy. And if you're Mac Brown, you're David Cutcliffe, at a certain point in life, it's probably a little bit beyond you. So it is becoming more and more a young man's game. So Mike Elko steps in at Duke, and they go 8-5, 9-4. Goes to Texas A&M, And despite the 8-5, the 8-5 on the surface is not impressive, and it's slightly disappointing. However, Texas A&M had the ball at the Texas 1 with 5 minutes left, down by 10. If they can run some kind of play to just get a gap on the Texas defense, they now put the pressure on Texas as the double-digit favorite. They're down 3. Their defense is on the field. It's a defensive game, obviously, 17-7. And maybe Texas A&M, maybe. I know I'm stretching. No, I'm stretching a few possessions here, but maybe they steal a win against a Texas team that was arguably the second best team in the country. And if they had, I think this gets lost on a lot of people. Texas A&M had pulled off that win against Texas. They're playing in the SEC championship game for a berth, for a bye in the playoff. But they lose that game. They finish 8-4, lose the bowl game 8-5. So the final record, not impressive, but Mike Elko, Texas A&M, money, recruiting, resources, on and on and on. Texas A&M in a good place. Do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. What's going on in the chat? We are blessed to have our buddy John D'Adamo showing up. Matthew Miller says Texas A&M 8-4. They will always be 8-4. See, that's not a good enough explanation for me. And we certainly respect Matthew's take because he does a great job on the Texas show. But just because you always went 8-4 doesn't mean that you can't change and go 8-4. But I get the point that he's looking for proof. He's looking for proof. Yes, I think that Texas A&M could not have done better. He was my number one coaching hire of the offseason. All right, at number 12, we got Tennessee. And we got some breaking news that Tennessee's quarterback has decided, I guess he's missed practice, and he's not showing up for practice, and who knows what's going to happen there. Oh, yeah, Tennessee, number 12. Okay. I'm not going to make any kind of decision on Tennessee's program. If anything, I think this speaks well of Tennessee's program. Now, going back 1 year in Tennessee fighting the NCAA, I hope that was more of a principled move than it was, well, we're going to get this 5-star quarterback and we need all this money. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to deal with the here and now, and I like the move that they made. And let's face it, did they make a principled move? Yes. Did it also make sense considering we're not talking about the best quarterback in the country? If that was Cam Ward, were they going to make that move? No, they would have been calling every booster they could find to scrape together every possible dime. But enough's enough. You're a slightly above average quarterback. You don't get a 40% pay raise off a deal we just determined last year. And again, if you want to hear me rant and rail on Nico and his clueless dad, entitled dad, and agent, then please watch the beginning of this. And at any time, if you watch these live streams, of course, just go back and watch what you missed. The call-in line's available as well if you don't want to hear me rant and rail forever. But we're going through the top 25, and we might make it to the end because we do have Peter Burns stopping by at 5:30, which reminds me, time to text him. Hey, man, jump on any time. I was talking to somebody yesterday who has quite the impressive contact list in their phone. I cannot compete with that. But that's fine. All right. So again, we've got Texas A&M at 13, Tennessee at 12. Josh Heupel's doing a heck of a job, and we know that they love football. They're going to embrace football, push it far. Tennessee was basically the first stadium in America. Let me correct that. First stadium outside of Michigan. I believe they were the first one after Michigan. So the second one to get to 100,000 capacity. And then Ohio State jumped in and Penn State. Tennessee, one of the best programs in the country. There they are, number 12. And they were down for a long, long time, but not like they didn't try. There were a number of bad coaching hires. Derek Dooley, Lane Kiffin at that time. Lane Kiffin, dumb. Lane Kiffin has grown a lot. Lane Kiffin, yeah. Who else did they hire? Butch Jones. So I believe they got it right this time with Josh Heupel. All right, let's keep going as we near the top 10 here. And could be a bit of a controversial selection here with Ole Miss at number 11. Because historically, Ole Miss is not Tennessee. They're not USC. They're not Oklahoma. But right now, Lane Kiffin is one of the best football coaches in America. And they've invested in their program. And they are killing it in recruiting. And they're killing it in the transfer portal. And they just sent as many players to the combine and potentially to the NFL draft as almost anyone in America. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, number 11, up from 13 following that, should say 10-3. 10-3 season. And another thing to consider here, for those of you who are going to jump all over me for certain numbers placed in front of these teams, understand that that this is razor close. Like there's not that much difference between 7 and 12 or 6 and 12. So you get to a certain point in this, there are stretches of just, okay, you're just making a razor close call. And again, we're not talking about drops between these programs. There's not much there. Who was I talking to the other day? Oh, it was our buddy Alec on the Indiana channel. Didn't necessarily agree with him. Number one, he's rating Indiana way too high. But just in regards to their status in college football, or at least last year's team, in my estimation. But also the top 3 or 4 programs in the country and the top 3 or 4 teams in the country are separate. And then you've got 7 or 8. And then you've got 30. We move it up to number 10 in LSU. So Brian Kelly needs to do what the previous 3 LSU head coaches have done, and that's win a national championship. That's what he was hired to do. So LSU, again, we have reached a point in the rankings where you can win a national championship at any of these schools. I would say in the top 14 schools, they can all win a national championship. And now that we've reached the top 10, those are where you're expected to win a national championship. If you don't win a national championship at Ole Miss, nobody's going to be surprised. If you don't win one at Texas A&M, despite all the resources they have and everything they've got going for them, nobody's going to be surprised because they've never done it. But now we've hit a place where you need to win a national championship at some point. and everyone we're going to hit on from now on has national championship aspirations all the time. So I would say Ole Miss is the last one off the board that a national championship is probably mentioned once in a while for the first time since Johnny Vaught in the early 1960s, but it's not mentioned seriously. It's talked about, fantasized about, hoped for. Oh, if we could possibly make it happen. Yes, Minnie, Clemson has won national championships. I'm sorry, you just started watching. What, about 6-7 years ago? You just missed Clemson winning national championships, I guess. Yes, you can win national championships at Clemson. They got the guy to do it. All right. Let's keep going. Didn't talk too much about LSU. Brian Kelly got to turn it around. That's a bad way to put it. He doesn't have to turn it around. They just have to elevate. He was hired to win national championships. First step, get to the college football playoff. So this is a fourth season for LSU. Obviously, they do everything possible to win. Clemson, they made an investment in their football program sometime early in Dabo Swinney's tenure. They had been a really good football program, a top 15 to 20 program since the late 70s, but they made a determination, we want to be on the elite level. And they're a great example of what you can do if everyone aligns. They struck gold with a head coaching hire. Who would have thought a wide receiver coach was going to become one of the greatest coaches in history? Okay. So they struck gold with the wide receiver coach. Maybe they got a little lucky. Maybe they just had that good of foresight. We'll have to go back and determine the AD that hired Dabo Swinney, or who made that decision to elevate him internally. But I'm sure he was on a short leash. Well, I say that on one hand, he did go 6-7 his first year, or maybe that was his second year. Anyway, Clemson, they are expected to make another run this year. A lot of people really like Clemson to make another run. Now, this program, if we were sitting here in 2018, if this was 7 years ago, I'd probably have them at number 2, but there would be an argument, number 1, that they were the best program in college football. They had just beaten Alabama by 4 touchdowns in the national championship game and won a second national championship. There was a solid argument to say this is the number 1 program in the country. And because of Saban's longevity and that Alabama was just there all the time, I would have still said Alabama 1, Clemson 2, and maybe I did at the time. Sure, I did. I don't know if it's formally recorded. But Clemson's not been the same since Trevor Lawrence walked off campus. They've been good. They've been the best program in the ACC, and that's not even close. Yeah, Florida State peaked, and Pitt jumped up and won an ACC, but Clemson's still by far the best program in the conference. Now, what they can do past that, they need to show that for the first time since 2020, they can compete nationally, because they have fallen off considerably. Alabama's number 8, and we see the drop from 4 to 8 with the thought process at this time last year that Nick Saban was Nick Saban, and Alabama was arguably the greatest program in history during his tenure, and Alabama was the greatest program currently, arguably. Maybe it was Georgia. Maybe Michigan had reached the pinnacle with 1 national championship. But basically, it was an Alabama-Georgia argument at the end of Saban's tenure. When you think about what Nick Saban did, actually, he was so amazing that the losses and the near misses are almost... I'm not going to say they're more impressive, because obviously winning the national championship and all of that is paramount. and that's what proves you're the best. But Saban, his near misses are almost so impressive to validate his incredible run. Think about this. Nick Saban's last game. That was not a vintage Alabama team. That was such a flawed Alabama team. They were so flawed. They had Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Enough said. They did not have the wide receivers that they had with Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs and that line of players, Jamison Williams, those guys. They did not have a dominant defense. They had a really good defense. They were one play away from going to the national championship game. And they would have been the favorite in the national championship game. They would have been a substantial favorite in the national championship game. If they do one thing right, or if they eliminate one mistake against Michigan, they had the foot close to the jugular on Michigan. If they do one thing correct there, Nick Saban is taking a very flawed team, and he's most likely winning the national championship again. In 2021, Georgia's first championship, that's not going to be brought up as a Nick Saban moment because it's not one of his 7 national championships or 6 with the Tide. But they were missing their 2 best receivers. One of them already out, Jalen Waddle. Then they lose Jamison Williams in the first half against Georgia. And they are winning the national championship game with 5 minutes left. They are 5 minutes away from winning the national championship game. And even after Stetson Bennett did what Stetson Bennett does, they still had the ball to potentially tie and had a receiver drop the ball. I don't want to name who it was because I think I know who it was. I think it was Ja'Cory Harris, right? Drops a pass. Ja'Cory Brooks drops a pass inside the 10-yard line, and they're going in to tie the national championship game. Like, this is just underlines Alabama's failures are like at the pinnacle of college football under Nick Saban. Okay, I went through all that to get us to this. Hands it over to Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has done nothing but win everywhere. And obviously last season was not to Bama standard. It was a Bama standard of 1985 or 2005. So that is reflected in the ranking. But Kalen DeBoer is still capable. Is he going to win like Nick Saban won? Of course not. He's not going to win like Nick Saban won. No one will. So it's a tough position for him to be in. And we got Bama at 8. Penn State's at number 7. Yeah, it's just a heck of a program. And, I'll go through my pros and cons of Penn State's season this last year. And the pros and cons are they won 11 games for the first time in the regular season. That's a pro. They'd never done that. They finally broke through to the playoffs. They won playoff games. They went to the Big Ten championship game, which they had not done in 8 years. There are a lot of pros to say this is the argument that Penn State broke through last year. The cons are, well, if there was a 12-team playoff, they would have made it 6 other times. And the only reason they won 11 games is because they did not have, maybe not that Michigan team that we saw last year, but a Michigan kind of team on their schedule to give them their second loss. And the other con is, yeah, they won playoff games, but they beat 2 teams that they would beat anyway all these other seasons, Boise State and SMU. So those weren't really playoff caliber teams. So you got your pros and cons, but James Franklin, despite all of his detractors, including myself at times, is doing a heck of a job. And Penn State's a heck of a program, and they've got it lined up this year that they should make a serious run to win the Big Ten and the national championship. Notre Dame's number 6. They just went to a national championship game. Were they the second best team in college football? I don't quite think so, but they could be. I'm not going to argue against it. I think they were in a batch of teams that were right there. And so if this was not backed up by excellent recruiting and by their brand and image and everything that they've got going for them, and if it wasn't backed up by 9-4, 10-3 as being decent seasons, you see where Notre Dame jumped up a spot this past season to number 6. At number 5 is Michigan. Of course, they're coming off a bad season record-wise. And I would have Michigan ranked higher if Jim Harbaugh was still there. So Jim Harbaugh's program, his staff, again, his program won the national championship and won the Big Ten 3 consecutive years. So this is where the nuance comes into this situation. All right. Enough of that. We will move on to Mr. Peter Burns from SEC Network. Peter, what's going on, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Just ready for a big week. We're getting ready to call the SEC Women's Golf Championships over in Tampa, and trying to figure out if I'm in the transfer portal or who else is in the damn transfer portal right now. Mark, it's crazy right now.
Oh, well, it officially opens in 9 or 10 hours, even though we've already seen like 150 names. So yeah, exactly. It's crazy. No doubt about that. So we might as well start with that. And Peter, I thank you because you're obviously hustling, traveling, and everything. And I didn't realize, boom, you're in the hotel door and you're coming on with us. So we appreciate it. Yeah. All right.
I mean, we're sitting here waiting. I mean, it's funny you said that, because that's like, I got off the plane today and I'm like, what the hell did I miss? Did I miss anything? I'm like, it feels now kind of like whenever you're waiting for NBA free agency or NFL free agency, you're basically waiting for college football free agency, Mark. And it's wild that that's where we're at in college football now.
Yeah. So obviously the talk of everything is Nico. So what do you make of this situation where on the surface, it just seems like a bad idea, an entitled thought or decision by most likely his father and agent to say, you're making $2.5 million, 2.4, I believe is the figure. You're a good quarterback. You've had one nice season. You're a decent quarterback at this point, still developing. And you've got such a great situation there. You're playing for an excellent team, an excellent coach who's one of the best offensive minds in football. Just stay put.
Yeah. And what happens is, there's a saying in life, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered to a certain extent, right? And we don't know how this whole thing is going to play out. For all we know, Nico could go get a better deal than where he's at right now. He plays great. He has an unbelievable career, and it looks like it was great. The thing is I don't know necessarily, like, as I see both sides of it, right? I see the Tennessee side of it going, wait a minute, like, you're using this as leverage. You didn't play great. And the other side of it, I see the leverage for the player standpoint. I mean, Mark, I talked about this on my show over a year ago, not this college football playoff, but the year prior, saying, when are we ever going to have a college football athlete decide not to play in the playoff and leverage it for more money? Well, come to find out, that's been happening. It's just been behind closed doors. Now we're understanding that this was done, and this might have been one amongst other players, not just at Tennessee, that said, hey, I need better money. And I think for the most part, people say, hey, we'll deal with that after the playoffs and we'll make it right or whatnot, to kind of kick the can down the road. And ultimately what ends up happening is that, they're trying to negotiate this deal. And I think at some point they reach a breaking point. And in any negotiation, you have to say, this is the last dollar that we can do, and we're out after that. And you have to commit to that. And I think ultimately that probably is what ended up happening. And so I don't really fault the players for asking for money if they want to get it. I also don't fault Tennessee for saying we're not good. What I can fault is the fact that I don't think they handled it the right way. Like the fact of just being there at a team dinner on a Thursday and then on Friday morning, just not showing up to practice, not communicating with the staff, not telling anybody about it, and then just saying, yeah, I'm in the portal. Like, that's just a kind of a Bush League way of doing it in my mind.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I termed it here. Bush League. You could put a lot of names to it because there's a relationship there with your position coach, with the head coach, that you should at least honor that. and stay in communication. So I got to give you a lot of credit for tying the economics to it, as you were mentioning a year ago. I was making the same statement, but I was looking at it more from the standpoint of, okay, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, those were the first two huge names that I remember saying, we're not playing in postseason games. These bowl games aren't that important our senior season. But I thought maybe we're getting to a point with the number of games that like a star on an 11 seed would say, I don't know if I can go through this 4-game gauntlet. We don't have that great of a chance. That would have been the determination, kind of more the NFL determination that it's not worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it changes for everybody and what they feel like their value is worth. And ultimately, I mean, when I come down to it, I told Tennessee fans, like, everybody kind of got what they needed in the first part of this deal, right? Like Nico in his first 2 years made a boatload of money, probably somewhere around, $4 million total between the 2 years. And for Tennessee, they got the hype of Nico, and then they got a quarterback that helped lead them to a college football playoff. Now, was he Joe Burrow? Not necessarily. Was he what we think Arch Manning's going to be? But probably not. But both sides, got kind of what they wanted in that relationship. So I think what happened is that they tried to negotiate it for a little bit more money, and they thought that was the negotiating window. Now, the problem is here, Mark, when all of these high caliber players now are negotiating these deals, a lot of times they're dealing with reputable agents, guys that have done this before. And when you deal with a reputable agent, that person's going to handle business the right way because they want repeat customers. They want to deal with schools. They want to deal with athletes. They want to know, hey, this guy is great at what he does, or this girl's great at what they do, and everything will be on board. But when Nico was kind of handled by his advisors and his family, they don't owe that loyalty to anybody. All they're doing is they're a one-person shop, and that is the business of Nico Iamaleava. And what we're seeing now is that market may be drying up more so than it was. Like the time to negotiate this was back when the first transfer portal was open, not the second transfer portal, because now everybody's pretty much got their quarterbacks. And so there's a lot less, of free agency dollars that are going to be there. And especially the way that they played this, I can't imagine they're going to get more money than they got from Tennessee.
Yeah. And so brings us to the landing spot, because for me, it seems like he might be backed into a corner here and have to find an option that's not going to be the most suitable or what he was expecting because of everything you outlined. Plus, what head coach and program is going to take on a quarterback unless he's decidedly better than what he's got and interrupt the room, send a bad message to his team. Plus, he's got to find $4 million or whatever the number is going to be, probably compromised from there. And it's just not worth the risk. It doesn't appear to be.
No. And, that they thought North Carolina was going to be that, and it does not appear like they seem to be out on that. UCLA is interesting, and that's one of the names that has floated around. But if I'm not mistaken, his younger brother committed to UCLA and then decommitted and went to Arkansas, or committed to Arkansas. So, does that kind of lead them a little bit kind of, I don't know what to do. So it's going to be fascinating. I do not have any insight of where he will go, but I am fascinated to track the story. And ultimately, Mark, I have spent a little bit of time around Nico as far as, football. I've talked to a lot of people that worked with him over at Tennessee. He's a good kid. He's from California. He's laid back. He just kind of wants to play football. And for him, I don't think he's really involved in any of the business aspect of it. That's where it's kind of been disappointing, is to see so many fans going, Nico is this and that, and he's entitled and stuff. I don't necessarily know that's the case. I think it's just a matter of, hey, I'm just want to play football wherever it's best for me. And at first it was best at Tennessee. And now my dad says it's maybe best that I go play elsewhere. And I want to honor what my dad says. And I'll be honest with you, I'm 46 years old. If my dad said, hey, you need to probably go play somewhere else, I'm probably going to listen to my dad. Like, just that's my relationship that I have with them. So, I think a lot of people are putting this on Nico. Now, Nico's also a grown man who makes a lot of money. So, he can make decisions for himself. But I also see where I just think that a lot of people are piling on him, where I think that it's kind of a situation where the family is making decisions on his behalf that has really, really hurt his name, his name right now.
And Peter, that's where I'll back up to this show one day ago where I did the same thing. So I'll apologize for at least maybe my first minute or so. I was almost in the middle of a rant against Nico, and I shifted it and kind of caught myself midstream to say, okay, we're talking 19, 20 years old. Like you just outlined, my dad directed me a certain way at that age. And then I redirected it more toward the influence, the surroundings, the circle around him more so than him. Absolutely.
And the craziest part about all of this is that if you're Nico and the family right now and you go, all right, what are you looking for? Well, we'd probably like $2.5–3 million. Okay. You want an offensive guru. All right. Josh Heupel was that. You want a good fan base. Tennessee will love you forever if you win. You want an opportunity to be seen. You want good wide receivers, good offensive line. You want a team that can make the college football playoff. Like Tennessee checks all of those boxes. And now, are you going to go to a team that doesn't have all those boxes checked last second, and then you missed all of spring ball and expect to be good? Like, more than likely, you're going to go to a team that's going to be super desperate, and it's not going to be good. And the reason why they're desperate is because the team's probably not good, or the coach needs to save his job, so he's throwing a boatload of money at somebody. I think it's the great lesson on how to handle an exit graciously. They didn't do that. And maybe more importantly, how to go about hiring professional representation if you're truly going to be a free agent in college sports.
Peter Burns here, SEC Network, ESPN. Catch his Twitter right there, obviously. Peter, great to see you. Want to move around the SEC a little bit with you. You're as connected as anyone. I'm going to go to the Bayou because Brian Kelly's looking at a fourth year.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's got to turn anything around. It's not like it's been a disaster, but 8-4, 9-3 is not going to get it done. And that's what the record has been, but he's hired to win eventually a national championship, like it seems everyone does at LSU eventually, the last three coaches. So where do you think they stand in terms of this team's shot at getting to the CFP and just where he stands with the fan base and the administration?
Yeah, I mean, the administration's fine with him. The fan base is a little bit more question marks on him right now, and rightfully so. I mean, for what you said, they expected a national championship, and they haven't got it. I mean, right? You know, they got punch drunk on the first year where they made the SEC championship game, but outside of that, they haven't had a whole lot of success. Like Brian Kelly has to win the opener against Clemson. I don't mean that because he's going to get fired. Just it's been 4 or 5 straight years that LSU has lost that opener, and that's something for the longest time LSU just didn't do. And so, and I look at the rest of the schedule, Garrett Nussmeier coming back, that they have a college football playoff team. And I think a lot of it hinges on that opener at Clemson this year. So I think the best thing that probably happened to LSU is, there was a kid named Bryce Underwood who ends up being the 5-star out of Michigan that you know about. And he was all committed to LSU. And then last second, Michigan came in with a boatload of money and he left. And I think that really was eye-opening for LSU because normally they don't get pushed around about things. And the fact that somebody came into their commit and basically stole him last second did two things. One, it fired up the fan base and the donor base to get more money behind name, image, and likeness. And then also, I think what ultimately they did was that money that they had earmarked for Bryce, that they're able to spend it in stuff that's going to probably make them a little bit more of a college football playoff contender.
Peter Burns, SEC Network. When we brought you on, Peter, I was in the middle of my off-season program rankings. I go 136 all the way up to number 1. We had just passed on Texas A&M around 12 or 13 because I love Mike Elko. I thought that they did as well as they possibly could in the coaches market. And even though 8-5 is what everyone sees, as well as I did, they had the ball at the 1-yard line against Texas down 10. Now that doesn't mean they're going to win the game, but they pushed that in and they put in a defensive game pressure on Texas to do something, get some first downs. Mm-hmm. And they're that close to getting to an SEC championship game. So I just think everything's in place for him to have a big run at Texas A&M.
Yeah, but we thought that was going to be the case with Jimbo, right? And we thought even when Sumlin had it going for a while, after Johnny Manziel. So, for whatever reason, there's just been kind of this sputtering when they really get some good momentum. And I do like Elko. I think he's a no bullshit kind of guy. I think he's ready to go and play like good, really good football. And the team is all in on him. And it's kind of the play of Marcel Reed as well, too, on how he plays. I mean, I saw Marcel Reed absolutely light up LSU in that game earlier this year, where LSU had a lot of success. And then what ends up happening is you got Garrett Nussmeier throwing 2 bad gunslinger interceptions, like Brett Favre type stuff, and then Marcel Reed killed him. So, I mean, that would be the monstrous breakthrough. I mean, Mark, I think when you start looking at your teams, everybody's going to be spending about probably anywhere between $15 to $25 million on a roster. There's not really any bad rosters in the SEC, which is quite, I mean, go look at Vanderbilt last year and what they were able to do, right? So it feels a lot more like the NFL, where you're going to have teams that are really good that are probably going to go 9-3 or 10-2, just because of how good these rosters are, and A&M is going to be one of them.
So, Peter, do you have a dark horse team? We were just going again through all these teams, and in the Big Ten, for me, USC is fascinating. In the SEC, there's too many for me to say just one. But for you, is there a team that you're just like, I don't know which way this is going to go?
Yeah, when I think about it, Ole Miss is interesting, and how much they lost to the NFL draft. Austin Simmons, we saw him against Georgia, and they trusted him to throw the ball, and he was great. But what happens when you're dealing with that week in and week out through the SEC? We don't know. Alabama's going to be interesting to me. I can't wait to see Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator, who him and Kalen DeBoer were a great 1-2 punch over at Washington for a while, and now Grubb's the OC. It looks like Ty Simpson's going to be the leader there in the clubhouse for that battle. So again, right here on April the 15th, especially because this year we haven't been able to see spring games and a lot of spring football because nobody wants to say anything. I mean, this is the least amount I've known about college football going into a spring than ever before, because every single coach is afraid of guys entering the transfer portal. And ultimately that hurts the game, because normally we would know what the rosters are. We would know these players. We'd get excited. We can talk about them. And right now I feel naked as a host. And even with my inside connections, of people don't want to say anything right now, because they're like, yeah, I think we're going to be good. But 2 of these 3 guys, if they decide to enter the portal or whatnot, I mean, but that's just the nature of the beast that we have to deal with. It's a shame, because we used to know what these teams were in spring. Now we really don't know until mid-August now.
We've got a stat here, Peter. It's pretty much property of the voice of college football, but if you want to run with it, you certainly can. Okay, so it hit me like 7 or 8 years ago, looking at the preseason publications, Street and Smith, Lindy's, etc. They're being way too conservative on these predictions. And I thought, how many teams drastically have a different year from one season to the next in the power conferences? So I started counting, and I determined 3 to be significant. If you go from 6-6 to 9-3, that's significant. That doesn't have to be 3, but it seems to be the beginning of a significant move. So I started counting this from year to year, thinking, and I quiz people on this all the time. I'll say, how many out of the 70 in the power conferences, and they usually guess like 11 or 12. Well, it's usually in the 20 to 22 range. Last year was 29 teams had at least a 3-game difference from 2023 to 2024. And that's what makes predicting so difficult, because if you're like me, and I think most people tend to be conservative, and you don't want to make a mistake, so it seems like these teams are just going to do what they did last year. But no, you got to go find like 6 teams in the SEC that are going to have a significant drop or increase.
Yeah, and can Kentucky be one of those teams that finally find the right quarterback going forward? What happens with Missouri, who's got back-to-back 10-win seasons? Is Bo Prabula going to be that guy, or do they struggle a little bit? Losing Luther Burden and some of these guys. So it's in Tennessee now. I mean, Tennessee, as much as we talk about Nico, Jake Merglinger, what's the quarterback situation going to be like for them? Like, could they go 6-6? They lose a lot. Oklahoma now with Mateer coming in, they do not want to have a mediocre team. So do they go 9-3 or 10-2 and catch lightning in a bottle? So with the transfer portal, it's kind of like basketball now, to where, hey, you can turn over a roster a lot quicker than you could beforehand. Beforehand, it would take a 3-year rebuild. You get your recruits, You redshirt a couple of them, you build them up 1 year. Next year, you're pretty good. In that third year, you got to be great. Well, now you could bring in 25 players and put a lot of Band-Aids as long as you got some good recruits coming in as well, too.
Peter, I can't let you off the hook before you take off, because we used to have the punch counter punch, Big Ten, SEC, and obviously you had the haymakers and I didn't have them, and now we've got
Back-to-back years.
The Big Ten. I still think the SEC is the better conference, top to bottom, but it's obviously, with all the changes in college football that a lot of people don't like, it is bringing better games to the conference schedule because they're just better teams in the same conference. And obviously you got this war of these two titans.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the deal. I mean, I feel like we're correct in saying that the SEC top to bottom probably has the most amount of talent. And that also kind of hurt the SEC last year, with South Carolina going 9-3 and Ole Miss going 9-3 and Alabama going 9-3. But with that said, Ohio State, when they're good, they're as good as anybody. Like I was at the forefront of saying this Ohio State team was the best team in college football last year before the college football playoff. And I said, if they play that way, no one's going to beat them. And they had the most talent, and they finally lived up to it. Mostly because Chip Kelly was like, all right, I'm going to call this the way I really need to call it. And he was great. And you go back to Michigan the year before. So, do I think that third best team, that Penn State, like, I don't know how great they're going to be each year in, year out, but I can pretty much assure you Ohio State's going to be as good as a Georgia, as good as an Alabama, as good as an LSU, any contender pretty much every single year. It just depends on what that second and third team in the Big Ten are going to do. Because honestly, if you had to say, okay, who's the 6th and 7th best team in the Big Ten versus the 6th or 7th best team in the SEC, I probably know where I'm going to put my money on. Yep. But in a conference or in a college football playoff, we're only going to get 3 or 4 teams for one conference. Does that really necessarily matter? I don't know. It makes for great fodder. We'll get one more year of a 12-year team playoff, and then we'll probably go 14 or 16.
Absolutely. Peter, it's great to see you. Appreciate the time. And have a great weekend with the golf. And where can people find that?
It'll be over on SEC Network over on Friday morning, and then I'm back here to Florida for next week for Disney World with the kids, and then off to Georgia for the SEC Men's Golf Championships, and then we got baseball and softball and PGA Championships. So it's the busiest time of year, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. Great to see you, man.
All right.
Peter Burns, SEC Network, great guy that I connected with when I was at the Worldwide Leader. And we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And we are pushing 2 hours. We will get to the conclusion of our list. Where were we? Let's finish this baby off. We might as well go to number 1. How about that? Notre Dame at number 6, Michigan at number 5. I think I was starting to state here, if Jim Harbaugh is still at Michigan, considering all the wins, all the good seasons, and then elevating to best team in the Big Ten, best program in the Big Ten for 3 years, national champions, then I'm ranking Michigan. If they go 8-5 last year, they might still be number 1 on this list, actually. But I don't know what their program is. And still, we're looking at number 5 in the country. It's not like they're 17. But with Sharon Moore running the show and considering 8-5, again, the final 5 here, that's where I'm going to make a differentiation from the rest of the list. I'm going to say the top 5 are somewhat separated with, of course, Notre Dame, Penn State, really Alabama and Clemson are that close to jumping back in there among the true elite. So Michigan, interesting at number 5, of course. And again, this is Sharon Moore. It's his testing time to show what he can do. And really, as we go up the ladder, considering what we saw at the Rose Bowl and what we saw at Autzen Stadium and what Ohio State brings to the table all the time, this was a matter of basically Georgia would have kept the number 1 spot, not by winning the national championship. If Ohio State would have won the national championship, but Georgia would have looked more Georgia-like, in not winning the national championship, let's say they would have lost the national championship game or lost a semifinal game, beat somebody. Where Georgia beat Tennessee. I'm trying to think, what were their best wins? Georgia beat Tennessee. Georgia beat Clemson. Georgia's going into an off season now and into a 2025 with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. And I got to tell you that the driving incidents we're just sticking to on the field, but that tells me something. That Kirby Smart's not perfect. Is he the best coach in college football? Arguably. He was on the top of my list at this time last year and had been for a couple of years, or Nick Saban was, and then Kirby Smart. But I don't know if I keep him at number one this year. We'll see when we throw it all together. It's going to be a tough call for number one in terms of college coaches because the guys that were at the very top, Kirby Smart, Dabo has slipped, and then the guys that were slightly down because of not winning the big game, whether that was Ryan Day or Marcus Freeman, James Franklin, they elevated. So that's going to be a close call in regards to coaches' rankings. But I think it's difficult to argue this top four, top five. Notre Dame after the season they had. Are they better than Michigan? Maybe, but there's not enough substance there for me to do that. Or Penn State, not after they lost to Michigan all those years. And again, really didn't have a significant win against a power brand in the playoffs. So I can't lift Penn State anymore. And I do think that Alabama, man, they lost by 3 touchdowns to Oklahoma. You know, they are not the same program. Kalen DeBoer is really good, and he can bring it back. But those top 3 there, I think, are different than the rest of them. And again, the top 5, there's difference there as well. And again, all Georgia needed to do is not lose 3 games and just show me they were a good football team with a lot of talent last year. Of course, they were still one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country, but not one of the top 2 or 3. They were one of the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the country, and that's not Georgia. If Georgia was Georgia last year and they would have played some titanic game against Ohio State in the national title game and lost, or against Texas in the semifinals, or against Oregon or whomever, Notre Dame played Notre Dame closer, lost by 13 points in that game, then Georgia maintains its number 1 spot. So this is more about Georgia falling than Ohio State elevating to number 1. Of course, they won the national championship, and they're always in the running as the best program in the country. They're the biggest constant in that. Think about it. Down to 8, Ohio State's the biggest constant by far. We can all find a recent time in which those programs were not there. In the last 10 years, Georgia's not been there at the end of Rick's tenure and Smart's tenure commencement. Texas, obviously, just 3 years ago, they weren't anywhere close to that. Oregon, 5 years ago, was not there. Michigan, 5, 6 years, was not there. They were 15. Notre Dame, Brian Kelly, maybe they were close to that range. And of course, Penn State in that range as well. So, interesting list. Hope you like it. If you have your questions for me, certainly I will leave it open for the call-in line for another couple minutes. Let me make sure that you can call in. Please call in specifically about this or Nico and what's going on in the transfer portal. Otherwise, we will shut it down from here. But appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Gold Irish Nate says 3 years ago is irrelevant. No, it's not irrelevant. You could make the same claim about what happened last November was irrelevant, or last season was irrelevant because it's over. If you're a thinking person, if you have a functioning brain, then you realize in some cases what happened 3 years ago is more relevant than what it happened with other teams. what happened 3 years ago at Georgia is more relevant than what happened 3 years ago at Alabama. Why? Because Kirby Smart's still at Georgia, but Nick Saban's no longer at Alabama. So it depends. But yes, can you draw a direct correlation between results 3 years ago at Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State, Clemson, etc., LSU? Yeah, because they're pretty much the same programs. They haven't changed. All right, we got our buddy Dan showing up. Dan, what's going on?
I'm doing pretty well, Mark. How about yourself?
I am good. What's on your mind?
I had some questions for Peter Burns, actually, but I was gonna ask him while he was on here. But there was a couple things I wanted to address with the Nico stuff.
Yep.
In my opinion, that's just. I mean, you shouldn't let your parents control like what you do, especially as a student athlete. I mean, it's ridiculous, Mark, and I find it to be a little Nico's parents to be a little paranoid, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. But again, I would say that it's reasonable to think that a 19 or 20-year-old would be heavily influenced by their dad.
But at the same time, I mean, you can't disagree with me on this, Mark. Like, Nico's parents are paranoid, and let Nico play for. And I just would say this: let Nico play for Tennessee. Don't just let him like. You should understand what I'm saying. Like, this whole thing with him leaving, not showing up because his parents said not to enter the transfer portal. They're not paying you enough. It's ridiculous. It's just stupid.
Well, I would agree with you that he made a bad decision. He made an entitled decision, and he's probably going to pay for it. But that was, again, most likely his dad being, I don't know if paranoid's the right word, being more of just basically
Stupid.
Being entitled, being greedy, being arrogant. Those are the words I would put on it.
No, and I can agree with you on that, Mark. But at the same time, they can't control him. They have to let him do what he wants to do. I mean, I'm just saying this as a former D2 high school athlete. I understand that pressure, but at the same time, Nico's parents got to let Nico do his thing. That's the bottom line.
You understand what pressure?
I mean, the pressure of, when you're like 19, 20, and I'm 21, but the bottom line I'm trying to say is just let Nico do what he wants to do. Bottom line.
Sure.
Because,
I don't know that I would say that you or I or whomever that's not in that situation can speak to the pressure, though.
I mean, and I'm saying the pressure of, going out of high school, going to commit to a different college, or saying, or the pressure of, your parents trying to convince you about going to somewhere else because that specific college wouldn't pay you that certain amount of money, or because of some other ridiculous reason. That's what I'm trying to say here, Mark.
Well, I got you.
And I'm sorry for sounding like an idiot. I do apologize.
Sounding like an idiot? You don't sound like an idiot. I agree with you basically that regardless of what the outcome is, he acted, and regardless of so I think that there's both influences here in both perspectives, in that he's an adult. This is his decision. He should step up to the plate and make his own decision as an adult. However, when you're 19 or 20 years old, you're going to be influenced by, most likely, you're going to be heavily influenced by people that you trust. And so it turned out to be what is most likely a bad decision. And even if it turns out for him, let's say he does get the money he's looking for and he does find his place, it's still a classless move and a petty move and a childish move and an immature move.
Well, I was going to say, say he transferred to North Carolina and they're going to pay him, the load of money that he asked for. And then that may turn out well for him, or that might be a bad decision on his part. You know, but
Sure.
that's just my opinion, Mark. But I could be wrong. You know, I'm not going to lie about anything on this program here.
All right, Dan. Well, we appreciate you calling us today.
Hey, just so you know, Mark, I'm going to be calling back later in the night when you and Leanne go on live tonight. I will be watching that tonight. It's 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I appreciate you looking at our schedule, but we're going to have to change that. So we followed that up. We've got to find a different time. So,
Well, I'll still be there to watch the show. I mean, come on. You and Lee are one of the best people on this channel.
well, that's very nice of you. I think I'm the only one on this channel. But anyway, no, we appreciate it, Dan. Call anytime.
Well, you know, like I said, I'm being honest with you and everything I say, and I'm not going to BS it like last time. Because last time, you know, you hear me ran on for hours, but, you know, I've learned to control that for one.
Well, that's very mature of you. That's a great thing. I'm being very sincere when I say that. That's awesome because we can all be better tomorrow than we were today. All of us.
I think you're being sincere, Mark. I'm just saying.
All right, man. Well, call back anytime.
Yeah, we'll see you later, sir.
Have a good day. Bye-bye. So, yes, we did advertise that we were doing our recruiting and portal show on the move tonight. We got to find another time for that. The schedule is something else this week. My goodness. And again, I'm going to leave this situation and go finish up my taxes. And I don't want to pull the trigger on the number I've got right now. So can you maybe, I don't know, fax me some receipts? Do they still fax things? Yeah, they still fax these recruiting contracts, still the scholarship offers, the national letters of intent or something. I don't know. Can you scan me some receipts? Something that we can throw on there? All right. We do appreciate you being here. Next time you're going to see me is we had to cancel the Iowa show today too. So Iowa's different this week. On the Move's different. Don't know about Thursday's show. Wednesday's show is going to be late. So Wednesday, we've got Ohio State at 11 Eastern, Ole Miss at 2. Then I guess we've got Miami at 7. And then we're going to do the USC show at 10 and come on late night with all of you at 11 Eastern. So give me a call on Wednesday night, and we'll see you then.